let's go ahead and just dive into some of these experiences we've had. I would say our oldest one, like I mentioned, is the one who has struggled the most and had the most anxiety when it comes to this. And I remember when we first started bringing her to her therapy sessions for autism back when she first received her diagnosis, we had to go up this elevator and in, and it was during COVID lockdown. So they were still doing the fever scanning and like all those tests, and they all had masks and gloves and all sorts of things. So one thing to consider in general is that our kids and any young kids right now in this day and age, the last couple of years that they were raised in was a time of really stressful medical anxiety for the entire world. And what parents and adults were feeling in terms of medical anxiety, children can kind of observe and absorb. So by osmosis, essentially, we kind of inadvertently taught our children to become anxious and associate medical stuff like gloves, masks, goggles, all sorts of things with anxiety because we just went through this multi-year global pandemic. So that's one unique factor of it. But it doesn't help that it's also a very sensory invasive experience. So if you think about doctor's appointments and dental appointments, even as a neurotypical person, a neurotypical adult or child, they're not comfortable. Like, people don't like them. It's awkward. It's invasive. It can be painful, depending on whether you're getting, a vaccine or if you're getting your teeth cleaned or you're getting, jabbed and prodded in all sorts of weird places. And it's just really awkward and uncomfortable for everybody. So you can only imagine how that sensation gets multiplied to somebody who has heightened senses. I know for me, for example, I am very sensitive when it comes to my face. And I actually personally experienced severe anxiety when it came to getting my wisdom teeth taken out. And it wasn't because of the procedure itself. It was because of the anxiety associated with the swelling that would come afterwards. And that, to me, felt very claustrophobic. It felt really, really stressful. And I had like a total meltdown when it came to that. Matt had to talk me down a couple times.
Well, and I think it was even afterwards with putting like the gauze in your mouth, because I mean, obviously the excessive bleeding, the first day or two after, you still have to deal with like the washing and bloodiness. But I think it was even just having like the gauze constantly in your mouth. I don't remember you specifically stating that you were like concerned, but you could just kind of see it in like your face, like you're a little bit more
I was a
on
hot
edge.
mess. Let's just be honest.
Right. But you were kind of a little bit more like panicked, like, okay, like, is everything okay? Like, because you had it on like, obviously both sides, the big gauze, but you were like very concerned and like, I don't know. It was just kind of an interesting. Yeah.
It was an absolutely horrible experience for me. And I am, again, you can ask that if you'd like. I am a very non-easily skittish person. I have no problem with bodily fluids. I worked in the ER as a medical scribe for almost 2 years. I am not at all afraid of medical procedures whatsoever. But there's something about the sensory perception for me of just having stuff in or around my face that just stresses me out like crazy. And so that's something that for me personally, I just couldn't handle it. And it was giving me insane anxiety. And so I think about things like that. And I think about my children when they are going through these procedures. We don't really know because our kids they're not nonverbal, but one of them is minimally verbal. And they certainly cannot express how they're feeling or what's causing them pain or anxiety, even though they can speak words. And so we have to see it from that lens and see that if they are freaking out, for lack of a better phrase, during these medical appointments, it's very possible that they're experiencing this sort of sensory overwhelm or this sort of sensory anxiety, and they really just have no better way of expressing it. And so they just panic.
Right. So, I'm thinking of just this past week, us going to the dentist, and for the week leading up to the dentist, our oldest kept saying that she didn't want her teeth polished.
Yes,
I
she says
I
she
think
doesn't
that
want her
was,
teeth polished
which I thought was
specifically.
interesting. Not like the little scrapey thing or whatever. It's like she didn't want her teeth polished, and that was what was her bridge that she did not want to cross. So we kept reassuring her, like, oh, okay, we will tell the dentist not to polish your teeth and all this. And then, I mean, I had the youngest one with me, and you had the oldest one who was saying that she didn't want to polish. But it was interesting because as I was sitting with our youngest, every different thing that the hygienist was doing with her, she kept saying, no polish, no polish, because she had listened to her sister say it. But most importantly, it was kind of like every step she thought was the polishing step of it. So it was kind of like, okay, first they were kind of like brushing the teeth a little bit, then they were like rinsing the mouth out, then they had like the little gauze to kind of get some of the extra
Fluids.
toothpaste or whatever out. But every step along the way, she was saying no polish. So it was like she had built up in her mind that that was the big terrible thing about the dentist. I mean, it never really happened. I mean, I guess for the polishing, isn't that just
It didn't happen. The
right?
polish, when they say they don't want
Like
polish, they
it was just
mean
like
they
the
don't want the electric buzzing brush.
right,
Yeah.
right. So I think they had tried to start with it, but she was so nervous they just used like a regular toothbrush for it. But that was like the one thing that they were very fixated on for the entire duration leading up to the like appointment. And then when they realized like, oh, that didn't even happen, it was just kind of like, I don't know, they were still fixated on that for some reason.
So to me, it makes complete sense. And so there's a couple things I want to break down here. One of them is what can you do first of all if this happens, and then the other thing I'll dive into is why they might be afraid of the polishing, for example.